Hello and welcome to Beach House 34's trial coverage of the Avery trial. In the last episode, we heard from Deputy Dan Kucharski as he was questioned by the prosecution. They laid out his involvement in searching Stephen Avery's garage and his bedroom, especially focusing on the discovery of shell casings, possible bloodstains, and that now infamous RAV4 key. Now in today's episode, we move into the cross-examination. And let me tell you, things get interesting pretty fast. Again, before we begin, quick reminder, if you've been following the trial coverage here on Beach House 34 in the coming weeks, all of these trial episodes, both old and new, are going to be moving to a new broadcast feed called The Trial Files. We've talked about this in the past few episodes. Nothing is disappearing yet, but I just wanted to give you a heads up so you're not caught off guard. If you would just rather focus on the trial readings, because it's kind of its own entity, right? It's huge, it's long, it's very intense. They will be located over at the trial files, but again, not yet. I will let you know when everything's been moved. However, you can go down into the description below, into the show notes, and find a link to where all of those are. If you listen or watch on YouTube, you're all set. You don't have to do a thing. Trial content will always stay in its own playlist, so you won't have any changes. But if you're a podcast listener, like on Apple or Spotify or wherever else, just go ahead and subscribe to the trial files now so you don't miss anything. All right? Thank you. Thank you. Now, let's get into the cross-examination of Deputy Kucharski. And the cross-examination is being done by Attorney Buting. Good morning, Deputy. Good morning. We have a lot to cover here, so let me maybe start toward the end here. When you were asked by Mr. Kratz if it was possible that Lenk or Colburn could have planted, let's say the key, without your seeing them, your answer was possible, right? And that's correct. And there weren't, sorry, there weren't any aliens in the room, right? If you listen to the last episode, you'll know exactly why I'm laughing. Not that I know of. So your later comment about it being possible in the same way that aliens are possible really isn't a fair characterization of what you meant, is it? Are you asking my opinion on, I'm asking you to characterize your answer. When you said it's possible, you didn't mean that it was possible in the same sense that aliens are possible, did you? I don't understand. All right, let me try it this way. You were a collections officer, evidence collections officer. Yes. That was part of your role. Yes. You were also documenting. Yes. And photographing. Yes. Taking gloves off, putting gloves on. Yes. And in addition to that, you were a searcher. Yes. You actually opened drawers or took things out yourself? Yes. And in the process of doing that, you looked at the items that you would take out, right? Yes. And your attention and your focus would be on those items, right? Yes. And you were not told at the beginning of that shift that your function was to be a watchdog for Mr. Lenk and Mr. Colburn, were you? That's correct. You were not told to keep your eyes on those two officers at all times? Correct. In fact, this was a lieutenant and a sergeant, right? Yes. Both of whom clearly outrank you, right? No. You were a deputy? They weren't in my chain of command. I work for the Calumet County Sheriff's Department. Okay. In terms of officer rank, they outranked you though, right? They held a higher rank in Manitowoc's, okay, Sheriff's Department. Yes. And did you ever know them before? Never met them before. Never met them before. Okay. But you knew their rank? Yes. Attorney Kratz, prosecution. And I'm going to object as irrelevant, and so does General Schwarzkopf. Gosh, this guy. But that has nothing to do with this witness. Attorney Buting says, this is cross-examination. And the court says, this is cross. I will give him a little latitude. And then the questioning continues. You knew their rank? Yes. Sergeant and lieutenant? Yes. And I take it that it never occurred to you that a fellow law enforcement officer would do something like plant evidence, did it? On that day, in that room? No. That was not on your radar, was it? No. You were not watching Lenk and Colburn to be sure that they did not plant evidence, right? That's correct. What we do know is that when you came into that bedroom the first time, there was no key on the floor, was there? That's correct. And you had been in that bedroom searching with Lenk and Colburn for about an hour, close to an hour, by the time that key was discovered, right? Approximately, yes. 3 people in that little bedroom, right? Yes. And Colburn and Lenk were both searching the desk and bookcase in that area, right? Yes. The 2 of them. And Attorney Buting then says, I think I will put up that Elmo photo again. And then he continues, I'm showing you 104, which is now up on the screen. Do you recognize that? Appears to be some type of model of the bedroom in Stephen Avery's residence. All right. And it's missing a lot of items though, right? Looks like just the furniture and the walls and windows and that type of thing is missing. Well, good Lord, what's left? All right. But over in what would be the top right photo or corner of this photo, there's a desk and a chair, right? Yes. And a bookcase with some sort of vertical slots. Yes. And there were lots of things on and in those items, right? At that time? Yes. We're talking November 8th? Yes. And that's the area that both Lieutenant Lenk and Sergeant Colburn were searching, among others. Among others, yes. But during that 1 hour, they were searching in that area, right? Yes. And Attorney Buting says, do you remember the key picture exhibit number? Do you have the photograph up here with the key on the floor? Oh, on the floor? I don't think so. Attorney Strang says it's 210. Attorney Buting says 210. And then he continues. Showing you 210 again up on the screen. That's what you were looking at earlier. And you took this photo, didn't you? Yes, I did. And that's exactly the way the key looked when you first saw it. That's correct. And there's also an evidence, some sort of it looks to me like a grocery bag, but a brown corrugated sack or something like that, right? Correct, in the foreground. And was that there when Lieutenant Lenk left the room, or did he bring that back in with him? He didn't bring it back in with him. I don't remember its exact placement as he left the room. All right. And you were actually very nearby searching the nightstand? Yes, my feet would have been just on the other side of that paper bag. And so bear with me for a minute. I don't know if my shadow can be on here, but so you were turned like this with your back to where the key is, searching the nightstand, weren't you? No. You were seated on the bed doing it then, right? Yes. But your body is turned so that this key is slightly behind you or over your shoulder? No. Well, do you see the nightstand in there? No. The nightstand is off the screen altogether, isn't it? Yes. So if you are able to reach the nightstand, you have got to be over here somewhere to the left side of this photo, or were your feet hanging over in top of the bag? No, they were just on the other side of the bag. My feet were actually pointing directly towards the key. It was sitting there and the nightstand would have been to my left hand. The key would have been directly in front of me. Okay. Well, but you didn't see the key? That's correct. The key was right smack dab in front of you, and you didn't see it until Lieutenant Lenk pointed it out to you? That's correct. And yet you immediately recognized this key as something of importance, right? As soon as we saw it was a Toyota key, yes. Sometime earlier than that, and then Attorney Buting kind of cuts off the discussion and him and the court talk about maybe taking a break at this point in time, which they do. So they all take a 15-minute break and then they come back into the courtroom and the cross-examination is then continued. All right, Deputy, we were talking about this key when we left off. And if I understand, and I'm not sure if it was in your testimony, but if I understand your report, just before Lieutenant Lenk left the room, he and Sergeant Colburn were searching that cabinet that's displayed here on the screen, right next to the key, right? Yes, before he left the room, they were searching. Lieutenant Lenk was assisting Sergeant Colburn move it around and stuff. And Lieutenant Lenk was about 1 foot from you when he was doing that, right? Yes. So his body would have been between you and this particular area? Yes. All right. And you guys talked after it was found, like, geez, where did that come from? Right? Yes. Did you examine the back of this bookcase cabinet at that time? Not directly after it was found. After it was found, I was pretty much married to it and I stayed with it until Special Agent Joy took it. And then we went back into the bedroom and completed a search. We took a look at that cabinet and tried to figure out where it came from. Did you seize the cabinet at that time? No, we did not. You didn't do that for like another month, right? I never did. You didn't have anything to do with that. Well, let me show you a photo. I'm going to tell you that it's not the same day. Apparently, you didn't take any photographs that same day of what the back of this cabinet looked like. Did you? No, I did not. But you theorized between you and Link and Colburn that perhaps the key had fallen out of the rear panel of this cabinet. Well, we had several theories. Let's talk one at a time. Okay. Yes, one of the theories was that it came out of the back of the cabinet. That's what we decided was the most likely. All right. You also theorized that maybe there was a hidden compartment or something in the cabinet. No, we didn't find any hidden compartment. Oh, you looked, right? You looked for any hidden compartments? Not me personally, no. Well, when you say we didn't find any, how do you know that you didn't find any? Lieutenant Link and Sergeant Colburn looked, okay, while I was there. And while they were there, they didn't find any hidden cabinets or compartments in that cabinet? Correct. And another theory was that perhaps it had been underneath, somehow caught up underneath the cabinet, right? Yes. And that was ultimately discarded. And you guys settled on this theory that somehow the key just managed to get around through that gap. In my mind, it was a general that it came from this cabinet. We also, there was some thought of in a door area, there was something on the wall that it possibly could have came from there, but it was pretty quickly dismissed. Right, because there is a outlet right next to it and a electrical cord, right? Right. That's not what I was talking about on the wall. Something higher up on the wall. All right. Several feet off the floor, but it was pretty obvious that it couldn't have come from there. Okay. So then your theory that you came up with on that day to explain why no one had found this key was that, and by the way, the cabinet was up against pretty close to up against the wall, right? Wasn't sitting out 3 inches or so, was it? It wasn't sitting out noticeably. I can't really say how close it was to the wall, but it wasn't a foot away from the wall. Okay. So at any rate, I don't know if I need these gloves, but since I saw Detective Uyghur choose them, I will use them as well. The theory was then that this key and the cloth fob and the plastic buckle somehow managed to come out that back corner, walk around the side, and lay like that, right? Attorney Kratz says, "Object, Judge, that's a mischaracterization of the evidence." And the court says, "Well, that's up to the witness to answer. I will allow the question." As we were searching that bookshelf, the bookshelf was, hold on, pulled away. And then Attorney Kratz says, "Objection, he asked for an explanation." Attorney Buting says, "I asked if that was his theory. He can say yes or no." and then we'll go from there. This is cross-examination. The court says, no, I'm going to allow him to give his answer. Attorney Buting then says, okay, go ahead. The bookcase was pulled away, turned, searched, and it was reasonable that while it was turned away, it fell into that area. But this key, Attorney Buting then says, can I show this to the jury? And the court says, yes. And Attorney Buting says, is there some reason we're keeping gloves on with this, that the jury can't handle it themselves? And the court says, from what my understanding is, there may be, but Attorney Buting then says, all right, we'll deal with that if need be. I will hold it up so everybody can see it, okay? And then he continues. You didn't hear it hit the floor whenever it got there, right? Correct. The floor is carpeted. Attorney Buting then says, well, can I drop it on the floor here, or do we not want to do that? Attorney Kratz says, what are we doing, Judge? Attorney Buting says, we're testing. Attorney Kratz says, is this an experiment in front of the jury? If it is, then we need to replicate the conditions. I object to any experimentation at this time. Attorney Buting says, that's fine. We'll hold off on that. The bookcase hasn't come in, so I don't know if they intend to introduce it or not, but it's not here. And then he continues. In any event, you did not hear it hit the floor, carpet or otherwise? Correct. And as you, not Lieutenant Lenk and Colburn, but as you were sitting there thinking, my gosh, how did this key get here? One of the theories that did not occur to you was that Lieutenant Lenk or Colburn perhaps put it there, was it? Did not occur to me, no. But as you testified before, because you were busy and occupied with other duties, it is possible that that might have happened without you seeing it, isn't it? Possible. Thank you. The electrical wire that we saw a photograph of and that you saw a picture of as well, right? Yes, I saw a photograph. You know what we're talking about? Yes. It was up on the rafters? Yes. Are you a hunter? Yes. Do you hunt for deer? Yes. Are you familiar with what people do when they catch a deer and bring it home? Attorney Kratz, for frickin' A, crying out loud, says, I'm going to object, Judge, assuming a fact, not in evidence. I suspect Mr. Avery is not a deer hunter. If he is, we have got some other issue. And the court says, well, he may or may not be, but I'm going to allow the question. And then it continues. Do you typically hang a deer in a garage after you have done something to it, dressed it, gutted it? We hang it outside. Okay. But you know that some people do hang a deer in the garage, right? I would assume. In fact, there was a deer in the neighboring garage that very day. Yes. Attorney Kratz says, objection, irrelevant. Attorney Buting says it's completely relevant. Attorney Kratz then says, Brendan Dassey can be a deer hunter. Stephen Avery can't. Attorney Buting says, if we're going to argue this in front of the jury, I think that's a problem. The court says, I'm overruling the objection. And then Attorney Buting continues. There was a deer hung from the rafters in the garage right next door, right? Yes. And so you don't know whether this wire was used to hang deer in that garage on some occasions either, do you? I don't know what the wire was used for. Do you know whether the wire was ever sent to the crime lab for any kind of test? I don't know. Okay. I suspect we'll hear if it was. Attorney Kratz then says, I ask that that be stricken, Judge. And the court says, the court will order that that remark be stricken. The jury is instructed to disregard it, which, you know, damn well they're not going to. But anyway, he then continues. Okay. We looked at a few photographs of the garage. Let me move to the garage for a minute. Were you taking the photographs? I took photographs. All right. Did you take any photographs before anything had been moved out of that garage, completely as is? I took a lot of photographs. I would have to go through my photo lineup to see if I did. None come to mind, do they? No. And so we don't really have a complete photographic record of what Mr. Avery's garage actually looked like with all of the items in. before anything was moved out, correct? I'm not sure. You said it was pretty cluttered, right? Yes. Not a whole lot of room in there even when you got there, right? For instance, Exhibit 231 shows the snowmobile and the Suzuki Samurai. Yes. Together. We can't see what's to the right of the snowmobile, though, right? In this photo? Correct. Do you know what an engine hoist is? Yes. Have you ever seen one before? Yes. I show you what's been marked. And Attorney Buting says, actually, I will show it to counsel first. I'm sorry. And then he continues. I'm just going to show you. I'm not going to have you identify these. I'm just going to, but for the record, I will say it's Exhibit 262 and 263. You said you are familiar with what an engine hoist looks like, right? Yes. Can you just tell me whether or not that large black item is an engine hoist? That is an engine hoist as I know it. Now, just so we're clear, this photograph was not taken in November. This was taken later in March, right? I have no idea when this photo was taken. Does the garage look familiar to you, though? It's Stephen Avery's garage. Yes. Okay. And in it is a large hoist. Yes. Where in the garage was it on November? Right as you walk in. Do you recall it? I don't recall. Do you recall that this was behind the tractor as you walk into the garage? No, I don't recall. Is it possible that it was? Yes. All right. Because we don't have a picture of that area to the immediate right before items start getting moved in and out of the garage, correct? Yes, yes, we do. We do. The only item we removed was the snowmobile. Okay. Besides the items that we collected for evidence. We looked through these photographs of the little tent things a little quickly the first time around. I just want to go through them with you again for a moment. You mentioned items 1 through 8, I think, along the right side of the photo, right? Yes. There's another item, number 16, down here. A little tent? Yes. What was that? I don't recall. And do you see that crack that begins from where item 16 is and runs what would be north-south along the left side of the photograph? Yes. That's the crack that you were saying was the big crack that went the full length of the garage, right? Approximately. And you're down on your hands and knees or squatting or something in order to find these little bloodstains, aren't you? The bloodstains were pretty evident. No one, well, you get down, was down on their hands and knees. You get down in a squat position. The court reporter then says, I'm sorry, you're going to have to talk one at a time. No one was down on their hands and knees? Not that I saw. It was a dirty floor. Okay. But you would have to squat down, at least squat down in order to make your circles and put your tents and all that stuff, right? Yes. So you are getting your face within just a couple of feet or so from the floor? Yes. And you are looking for any evidence at that time of a possible homicide, aren't you? There was a general search. We were looking for evidence that stood out, didn't have anything specific at that time that we were looking for. Well, officer, you picked up some shells, right? Yes. And you thought that maybe those were relevant, right? Yes. And that they may, in fact, have possibly been involved with a homicide. That's why you took them, isn't it? Yes. So you were looking for evidence of a homicide? Yes. Including shells, right? Yes. And any bullets that you might come across, right? Yes. And you are also, at the same time, looking for bloodstains on the floor, which can be very small, dime or smaller, right? Yes. And you are looking all along this crack, virtually every area that is open floor in this whole area. You are looking for bloodstains or anything that might be evidence of a homicide, right? Yes. Pointing now to the left lower side of this photograph, where there's a crack. Did you see a bullet on November 6th, 2005? No, because if you had, you would have collected it, wouldn't you? Yes. That would have been extremely important evidence, right? Yes. And you did not. I did not see it. A bullet there. Who else was searching with you? On the 6th, in the garage, was Lieutenant Lenk, Sergeant Colburn, and Detective Remaker. Seriously, are there no other people that are available to do these kinds of searches? These guys are always there. Continue. So 4 of you in that garage, right? Yes. And none of you found a bullet or bullet fragment, did you? That's correct. Now, let's look at Exhibit 243 for a moment. The council kind of zoomed in on it before, so let me do that with the Elmo. Actually, looks to me like it may be slightly different, but you mentioned that there were 2 little areas that you thought might be bloodstains there. Correct. There's spots, and then it appears to be some type of pattern. Do you have the laser up there? Yes. Could you point to where those 2 are exactly? The 2 that the tent for 6 was identifying were these spots, and this is the pattern. So when you use your swab, did you swab them separately, or did you swab this one, put it in a bag or whatever, swab what? This one, put it in a bag? What did you do? I wasn't taking the swabs. Oh, you weren't? No. Who was? Detective Remaker, Lieutenant Link, and Sergeant Colburn were taking the swabs, or giving them to me, and I was packaging them. All right, you were watching, you were seeing how it was done, right? Yes. So you don't know, or do you, whether this swab from number 6 pertains to this spot, this spot, this spot, or this big blotch, do you? No. If they thought they were separate items, they probably would have swabbed them separately. Would that be the procedure? Well, the procedure that I decided, we had several drops of blood and patterns. You normally take several swabs of them, and we decided to take many swabs of them, pretty much as many as we could. I had a limited amount of swabs in my kit, so we used what we had, but we took many swabs from there. Okay, but just so we're clear here, when you said, I think it was items 1 through 8 that were swabs of possible blood, you didn't know it was blood, just possible? Correct. And we entered a whole bunch of these exhibits together. They all say, I will let you look at a couple of them. I think they are all pretty much the same. Well, maybe not. Let me look here. I'm going to show you Exhibit 659, which is one of these little paper bags. Take a look at that for a moment, would you please? Yes. And that says, description of it is, well, why don't you just read it? Test/control possible blood drop. Okay, so control. What does that mean? Do you know? Yes, when we're trained, there is some debate right now as to whether a control is even necessary. When I was in school, they said that it was basically up to us. A control would be you have the suspected spot, and then a control would be a relatively uncontaminated area. The reasoning behind it is, I think the reasoning behind it is to try and pick up any type of contaminants that may be in that area besides suspected blood. But again, it was something that they said was optional at this point in time. Who was telling you that it was optional? The trainers at Fox Valley Technical College. When did they tell you it was optional? When you were there or since? When I went to school in 2005. Okay. So this exhibit in front of you, Exhibit 259, does that have more than one swab in it, or should it? Yes. Just what? 2, 3, 5, or do we have any way of knowing? Open it up. Well, I mean, is it practice to put in more than one swab in each little bag? Inside the bag, they are in separate containers. Okay. So there could be more than one swab in each one of these bags. Yes. And the fact that there is a control taken, there should be, right? Correct. Looking at 651, read what that says, please. It says test/control, and then control is crossed out, and then continues possible blood drop. So with control being crossed out, does that mean there is no control most likely in this one? I would assume so. Attorney Kratz then says, what exhibit was that? You said 600 something? Attorney Buting says it's 255. The tag number is 651. And then he continues. And actually, this is your handwriting, isn't it? No, that's not my handwriting. Doesn't it say Officer Kucharski on it? Yes, it does. I'm sorry, Kucharski? Yes. All right. You didn't fill this out, but it has your name on it? That's correct. Okay. Do you know who did? No, I don't. All right. You don't know who sealed it either? I would have to look at the package to see if there's initials on it. Well, probably not important. So let's move on. Let me just clear up a couple things here. When you do these swabs and you're looking for possible areas of blood, do you do a phenolphthalein test? Do you know what that is? I'm thinking that's some type of presumptive test. Correct. And do you do those? Did you do those on this day? I think at the beginning, we may have done one just to make sure that we were looking at was blood. I'm not positive on that though. All right. So you may not have, but in any event, you are picking out spots on the garage floor that may or may not be blood, right? Correct. Because you mentioned that there's a number of big areas of fluid and that sort of thing, like you often find on garage floors, right? Correct. And like this exhibit right there, I'm going to put up a different one to show in a little bit more. Perhaps the untrained eye had a lot of red spots just above the exhibit or the evidence tent number 6. Correct? Correct. But that's not blood, is it? I don't know. Well, did you swab it? I don't know. Have you ever seen transmission fluid? Yes. Have you ever seen it stain a floor? Yes. Is transmission fluid red? Reddish brown tinge, if I remember. Yes. Okay. And there's lots of stains like this particular red one in that garage. Is that fair to say? I didn't hear a lot of stains like this. These reddish, yes. Sort of brighter red stains, yes. You're looking more for dark brownish red, right? When you are looking for blood? Yes. And let me just go back for 1 minute. You mentioned right under the 6. There's what's commonly called a contact type of stain right there, right? Shows a little bit of a pattern. Yes, it's some type of pattern. Did you ever make a determination of what that was? I'm not trained in blood patterns. Well, did that look like a blood pattern to you? It's a pattern. Looks like something contacted it with circles, like a footprint, perhaps? Something like that. And similarly, this is exhibit number 244, by the tent. You have that little measuring stick or whatever next to some sort of a contact pattern there, right? Some kind of pattern, yes. Do you have any information as to whether that was ever identified as anything of relevance? I don't know. Okay. Could have been just, again, totally unrelated to anything in this case, as far as you know. I don't know if it was related or unrelated. All right. Hello. Hey. Hi. If you keep coming back to this channel, take the 3 seconds and subscribe. It's free. It tells YouTube that this work matters. Just click below. It's not painful, I promise. Exhibit 245 is the missing poster for Teresa Halbach that you found in the office of the Avery property, right? I found it. We found it in one of the offices of what I call the new shop building. Well, this isn't going to do what I want it to do, so I'm going to just show it to you instead. Actually, I think we have one of these better. Okay. Okay. Again, I'm just going to show you Exhibit 10, which has already been identified and introduced as an exhibit. There's a color version of the same thing we just saw on the prior exhibit, right? Yes. And it has information about the missing woman, right? Yes. And also about her vehicle, does it not? Yes, it does. And does it have a license plate on there? Yes, it does. SW William 582? SWH 582. SWH, okay. H as in Henry. And how would you say that if you are calling in a license number? What's your code for those letters? S Sam, W William, H Henry. Okay. And it also has the year of the vehicle, does it not? Yes, it does. 1999? Yes. All right. So if you had this information ahead of time, would there be any reason for you to have to call into your department to ask them to identify the owner of SWH 582? Yeah. Attorney Kratz, then obviously rightly so, says objection judge calls for speculation, especially with this witness. And the court says, I'm going to sustain the objection. Attorney Buting then continues. Now, you said you are not a blood pattern expert, right? That's correct. But you have been to the academy and you have had training, correct? I don't think I've been to any academy. I'm sorry, Fox Valley, you mentioned? I went to evidence school there. Yes. Okay. And have you ever been at any, you have been at a number of crime scenes, I assume, correct? Yes. Including ones where there are shootings? No, I have not been to a shooting crime scene that I can remember. Okay. But part of your evidence collection training, were you taught about how to collect evidence from the scene of a shooting? I think it was more general. I don't think they specifically said this is what you do at a shooting scene. Well, for instance, we looked at a number of these exhibits. Number 234 being, first, I want to direct your attention to this one you said was on the west wall of the garage. That's correct. The wall right as you come in the door, the service door? Correct. Coming in the service door, it would be to your right. And you mentioned that this is even more cluttered with junk than it looks like here because it's really quite deep. It's hard to tell the depth in this photo. Yes. It really fills up probably 4 feet from the wall or more. I would approximate 4 feet. Sure. Okay. Lots of items there. Also, Exhibit 233, which shows kind of part of the right that would be the southwest corner and then the southern wall of the garage, right? Yes. You can't actually see the corner, but you can see stuff is piled all the way out that far. Correct. And also the big John Deere tractor? Yes. So there really was not very much open floor space in that garage when you walked in. Isn't that true? I guess approximately, maybe. Do you want me to approximate the size of this space? Well, we probably have it to the half inch on our computer animation. If you remember when this guy testified, he was very, very precise that he had almost to the half inch on the measurements. So that's why this is kind of funny. And he continues. But why don't you just tell us what you think the overall interior size of the garage is? Of the entire garage, it's a typical 2-car garage, and then that west side is like a storage area where you have got 4 or 5 feet of storage inside your 2-car garage. And the east bay of the garage was completely filled except for maybe a couple of feet behind the Suzuki Samurai. Is that fair? You could walk around the Suzuki on all sides, but the Suzuki largely filled up that east bay, correct? Yes, it filled up the east bay. But the Suzuki, because it's a smaller SUV, was some space behind it. Yes, that was open. Yes. And then there's a snowmobile next to it in the west bay, right? In the center portion of the west bay, yes. And then there's a tractor. So there's really the only open space in that whole garage was sort of maybe 3 or 4 feet in the east bay going back towards the rear. Yes, a portion of the east bay that wasn't taken up by the snowmobile was open. And then right next to that open area is all of this clutter. Many, many items, right? To the west of it, yes. Many, many items that would be difficult to wipe clean of any blood spots if there was any blood spatter. Isn't that right? Objection calls for speculation, and he said he wasn't an expert in that field. And the court says sustained. He continues. Did you see any little spots of blood all over things? Just on the floor. Just on the floor. And those looked like drops, right? I mean, not like, well, strike that. You are not a blood spatter. I won't ask you. Of course, if you had seen anything that looked like blood spots on any of the items surrounding that confined open area, you certainly would have made note of that, wouldn't you? Yes. And you did not make note of it? Correct. Let me ask you just briefly, after you were done with the garage, you and Remacher attempted to go around to the rear of the garage. I'm not positive on when exactly we did that, if it was before or after I take the burning barrels. But it was sometime after the garage had been searched. Is that your recollection? Correct. We were finishing up the garage and we took a look around the outside along with the inside. Okay. And you said that you were unable to approach because this dog was barking and coming at us. Yes. Okay. And you knew the dog would have to be removed in order to search that area? Yes. And this is November 6th, right? Yes. Let me move back to the prior day, November 5th. Yes. One of your duties was actually working with dog handlers, wasn't it? Yes. In fact, you spent almost your entire duty at the Avery property on November 5th going around with dog handlers? Yes. And dogs? Yes. And dog handlers are experts at handling dogs, right? To your knowledge? I would assume they are experts at handling their dogs. All right. Did you ask any of those dog handlers to come and remove that dog from behind the rear of Mr. Avery's garage so you could search that area? That night, we came up that berm there from the area that the cars were stored with the dog handler. And the dog was on top and it was barking. And I don't remember if I decided or if she decided that she didn't want her dog being distracted by the other dog. So we stayed away from that area. You are talking about the previous night now, November 5th, right? That was the 5th. Yeah. Okay. So knowing that and having seen that dog behind Mr. Avery's garage on the 5th, did you make any effort to have one of these dog handlers or someone else remove the dog? No. How about the 6th? Didn't do that either? Absolutely not. Let me move to the firearms shells for a moment. You testified here today that you, on November 6th, seized 10 or 11 shells, correct? Yes. You testified before in this case, though, haven't you? At a preliminary hearing? Yes. You were under oath then, right? Yes. Just as you are today? Yes. Do you recall testifying on that occasion that you seized 10 shells? Yes. Never said 10 or 11, did you? Correct. And in fact, the exhibit that was shown to you, which is marked as Exhibit 250, this is the bag that has the little pill box with shells in it, right? Yes. And we had you count how many shells were in there earlier, correct? Yes. 11 is what you came up with? Yes. You don't know how they got in this bag, these two glassine bags? No, I don't. But one has 3 and one has 8? Yes. If in fact you seized 10 shells from the garage and we have 11 in this pillbox, how do you explain that? Or can you? In my report, I put that we took 10 shell casings from the garage. On the evidence sheet, I put 10 shell casings from the garage. When I reviewed the photos, there were 11. I miscounted. And at this point, an exhibit is marked for identification, and the questioning continues. You said you reviewed the photos and you counted 11. Correct. You told us earlier that you didn't take photos of all the shells. Do you recall that? Correct. Because some of them were under items, and so you couldn't photograph them in their location. Correct. You actually lifted up items in the garage, some of that junk, in order to find some of those shells. I didn't lift anything up. It would have been Lieutenant Lenk, Sergeant Remaker, or Detective Remaker, or Sergeant Colburn. Okay. One of the 4 of you actually had to move some of that junk in order to find the shells. They were not all laying out in the open somewhere. They weren't all laying out in the open. I can't really testify to what they did. I don't know if it was inside of something or, okay, if it was underneath or what. All right. But in any event, you don't have any photographs that show 11 shells, do you? Just this photo here, Exhibit 220. All right. Now I'm showing you Exhibit 264. Will you look at that for a moment and identify that? This is the evidence property document that I filled out, a copy of it that I filled out for, among other things, the 22 long rifle casings that we collected. All right. And it has got these swabs of these garage stains, unknown stains, right? Correct. And it has also got item number 11. It says 10.22 LR empty casings from garage floor, correct? Yes. Now, underneath that is item 12, yes, that says 1.22 empty case? No. What does it say? 223 empty case. Oh, so that's a completely different type of bullet or case. Shell? Yes. Okay. That's a Remington 223. So that could not explain why there's 11. Is that what you were telling me? Right. Couldn't be that those were mixed up? Not in the package, but I'm thinking that's where that it was mixed up, that it's between 10 and another one, the 11. I think that's where it got mixed up. Not the actual cases got mixed up, just the number of count. Well, Exhibit 220, which you identified earlier as a box that has some, do you know when that photograph was taken? No, I don't. Do you know whether that was before or after it went to the crime lab? I don't know when it was taken. All right. So you didn't open it. I mean, this used to be, if this was evidence that was seized at the garage, I assume that it would have been in one of these nice little bags all sealed up with tape, right? Yes. Well, it was in the box for sure, sealed. The box was sealed. I don't remember if I put it in another. Okay. So the box could have been a box like this that was inside the paper bag that has a seal on it, right? Correct. But there's no tape on that particular box that we can see, right? No, it's been opened. That's what we're referring to, correct? That's the picture, yes. And did you ever amend your report to indicate that there were 11 casings instead of 10? No, I didn't. Did you ever amend that property inventory sheet, which we just marked as Exhibit 264? 264? No, I did not. And in fact, you came to the conclusion that, oh, maybe there really were 11 instead of 10 when somebody showed you this exhibit that's now on the screen. Isn't that right? Yes. Somebody else who had opened the evidence after you? I don't know who opened the evidence. Who showed you this photograph? District Attorney Kratz. And that's when you determined that you had miscounted and that there were really 11 instead of 10, right? Yes. Okay. Well, he's kind of dug himself into a little hole here, hasn't he? This rifle, you indicated that you have some expertise of sorts because you are a work for the armory. I'm the armorer for the county. Okay. This item here, that's the 22 marked as Exhibit 247. It's a pretty common firearm, wouldn't you say? Yes. It's pretty cheap. Yes, relatively. I don't think too many guns are cheap anymore. Well, maybe between $100 and $200, something like that. I would have to look up what the price is. Buy it at Walmart or places like that? I believe Walmart stopped selling guns now. I don't know what they used to carry or do carry, but it's the kind of gun that many people have. Yes. Many, it's a standard cheap 22. Yes. Used for hunting rabbits, things like that. Used for a lot of things. Yes. In fact, you found another one very similar to that on the Avery property. Did you not? Yes, I did. And that one was also a Marlin Model 60 SS 22 caliber semi-automatic rifle found in the you found a Marlin Model 60 SS 22 caliber semi-automatic rifle in another residence? Yes. Sort of next to a refrigerator? Yes, I thought I heard you. The exact rifle, there are some differences between the rifles, but they are similar? Yes. Same class, certainly. Same model even. Okay. Do you remember where you got that? That was out of Charles Avery's residence, also known as Chuck. Chuck, yes. Did you test that rifle to see if it had been recently fired? That's beyond my scope of expertise. Did you test this rifle? That's beyond my from Mr. Avery's residence. That's beyond my scope of expertise. Are you aware of whether anybody tested it to see if it had recently been fired? No, I'm not aware. And you also found some 22 rifles in the Janda trailer, right next to Mr. Avery, didn't you? We found weapons in the Janda trailer. I don't remember exactly which ones were where. I seized quite a few weapons out of Chuck Avery's, Stephen Avery's, the Jandas, shop building, vehicles that were there, but placing all the other ones, I don't know. When you say weapons, these are basically hunting rifles, firearms, basically rifles, shotguns, pistols, all right. But the majority appeared to be the kind people would use to hunt. Some, yes, okay. And the ammunition that you identified, do you still have that photograph up there, or did I take it away from you? I have Exhibit 246 of the 22 long rifle ammunition. That's also very common ammunition, right? Yes. It fits in any 22? No. Any 22 long rifle? Yes. And would have fit in any of those other 22 long rifles that you seized on the Avery General 40-acre property? Yes. And the two rifles that are introduced here in court that are sitting over on this evidence table, the muzzle loader and the 22 long rifle, those are the only two firearms that you found in the trailer in which Mr. Avery resided, right? Yes. Do you know who owns that trailer? I don't know who owns the trailer. Do you know who owns those firearms? Objection, irrelevant, Your Honor. Possession, not ownership. Attorney Buting says ownership goes to possession as well. And the court says, I will allow the question. And then the questioning continues. Do you know who owns And then the court says there's a difference between determinative and relevance. Attorney Kratz says, correct, hearsay, judge. And the court says that's too early for that. The question is if he knows. Attorney Buting then says, yeah. He then continues, do you know who owns those firearms? I would have to assume I don't know. You don't know? Correct. You are assuming just because you found them in that trailer? I assume Stephen Avery owns them because they were found in his bedroom because the one has tape on it that says the name Steve. A tape on it, kind of like a neon sign right there. Steve, right? Yes. Pretty obvious, isn't it? Yes. Attorney Buting says, thank you, that's all I have. The court says, any redirect? Attorney Kratz says, not of this witness, judge, thank you. The court says, all right, the witness is excused. And at this point, after he's excused, the court then excuses the jury and they have their lunch break. And at this point, we're also going to end this episode. Okay, so let's hear what Kathleen Zellner, Stephen's post-conviction attorney, had to say in her filings with Manitowoc County regarding what Kucharski just said. And it's a problem. One of the evidence bags in the Avery case has Kucharski's name on it. But when he's asked about it under oath, he straight up says, that's not my handwriting. He didn't write it, he didn't seal it, and he doesn't even know who did. Let that land for a second. You've got an officer's name on a piece of critical evidence, and even he can't say who handled it. In any case, that would be sloppy. But in a case where the defense is literally arguing that evidence may have been planted, this is a giant flashing neon red flag, and nobody seems to be in a rush to explain it. Okay, so let's take a moment, wrap this up, take a breath, break down what all we've just heard, because that cross-examination of Kucharski was a lot. We've got this key piece of evidence, literally, that somehow appeared on the floor of Stephen Avery's bedroom in plain sight in a spot where Deputy Kucharski had just been sitting. And yet somehow he didn't see it until Lieutenant Lenk walked out of the room, came back in, and magically spotted it on the floor. That alone should raise every red flag you've got, but that's not even half of it. Attorney Buting then presses on this, and it ends up being a pattern of contradictions and these blind spots and various other things. So let's kind of run it down. We'll start with the key. Kucharski was seated right next to the spot where this RAV key 4 was found. His feet were pointed directly at it. He says he didn't see it until Lenk said something. But when he's asked if it's possible that the key was planted during that time, Kucharski says under oath, yes, it's possible. That's not speculation. That's testimony. Lenk and Colburn, the same two Manitowoc County officers whose involvement had already raised eyebrows, weren't being watched. Kucharski says he wasn't told to monitor them. He didn't consider that they might plant evidence and wasn't focused on anything except what his own job was. So was anybody watching the watchers? No. Despite trying to claim that these officers didn't outrank him, boy, he really tried to skirt this as much as he could, didn't he? Kucharski admits that they were a sergeant and a lieutenant. Come on. We all know how chain of command works and how easy it is for lower ranking officers to defer. And then let's talk about these shell casings. He initially reported 10 shell casings, collecting 10 of them. But the evidence bag, it had 11. His answer? I miscounted. In the meantime, he also says he didn't photograph every casing because some were under items. So how are we confirming the chain of custody here? We're not. Swabs were taken from stains in the garage that might have been blood, but no test was really done to confirm it. Not all samples had control swabs. Some stains look like transmission fluid. Yet those swabs go into evidence like they mean something. And this garage was full of clutter, right? Officers didn't move or remove all items. Kucharski even admits that they didn't photograph the scene before things were disturbed, meaning there's no full visual record of this garage before potential evidence was shifted around. And then this vicious dog as an excuse. So Kucharski says that they didn't search behind Avery's garage, potentially where this burn evidence might have been. And we'll get to this because a dog was barking and coming at them. Okay, I get that, right? But this was a massive criminal investigation, and they had dog handlers on the property the day before, and still no one dealt with the dog. That's either lazy or deliberate. And finally, oof, this was something. The license plate. Attorney Buting asks whether the missing person flyer for Teresa Halbach listed her license plate and car details, and it did. So if everyone already knew the car's plate, why would Officer Colburn call dispatch asking who SWH 582 belonged to? That question only makes sense if A, he really didn't know, or B, he was trying to create a record after the fact. Kratz objected really hard at this, but the implication is obvious. So what do we really have here? We have a chaotic search, a mysteriously placed key, and sloppy documentation. The system that was supposed to preserve evidence looks more like it was preserving narratives. And you don't need to be a defense attorney to see that something here does not add up. In the next episode, just a heads up, it starts with quite a long discussion about one of the jurors in this case before they move on to the next witness, which will be investigator Gary Steyer, special investigator. He's with the Calumet County Sheriff's Department. He was involved in several searches of Avery's yard, including Stephen Avery's trailer, November 5th through 12th, and on March 1st and 2nd. He was also present for the discovery of the bullet fragments on March 1st and 2nd. So until then, thank you. Thank you all for listening. You are all so appreciated. We will talk soon. Bye for now.